Now we will do some coding on Python language with respect to object oriented programming features. Very simple coding just to show you how basically it is working. So first thing is that always remember physically an object does not exist without its blueprint. For example, your home, your house physically exists. It's a building, and for every building there is a blueprint. If you check, you will find a blueprint which represents what is the structure of the building, how many rooms is there, and many other information. Similarly, in object oriented programming also, if you want to work with an object, first you have to create its blueprint and then you can create that. You have already little bit worked with this type of concept but not in form of object oriented programming. You have done in C language, that is the concept of structure. If you remember, in case of structure, you created a structure and then its instances. What is that instance? That is the instance which basically in memory it is loaded, and the structure is basically the blueprint of the instance. Similarly, here we will specify class as the blueprint and instance of a class is an object. So naturally a question may come in your mind, then what is the difference between structure and a class? The difference is that in case of structure, you only created some variables, like that means some properties, but it was not possible to implement some features in the class, but we can implement some feature in the sorry, it was not possible to implement some feature in the structure, but we can implement feature in the class. For example, let's start with, so suppose I'm writing how to write a class. We write in this way: class. Class is a keyword, okay, and then some class name. For example, class record, or say class student, okay, and then it's something like done, and the variables that you can have over here can be initialized something like, for example, suppose I have two variables here. One is say role is equal to say 0, and I have one more variable, say name is equal to some name xyz, some ram, okay, a very simple one. And now you see, if I, as I told you, that I can create some features. Anyway, I will create features later. But before that, suppose let's try to create a object of this class student. Suppose the first object student1 equal to, I should write the object name, and that's all. But if you run this code, you see there is no error over here, right? It's running fine. That means an object is created. So if you try to print S1, if you try to print the role and name of this object S1, is it possible to print? You see, you are getting 0. The reason is that you are basically, when, so what it is saying actually, or if you also print the name of the student, S1 dot name, and you see it's giving 0 and ram. What does it mean? It means as soon as I will create an object of class student, by default the name will be initialized by 0. I'm sorry, the roll number will be initialized by 0 and the name will be Ram. As simple as that. Okay. Now, for example, you want to change the name of the students over here. So if I write, say roll s dot roll equal to 10 and s1 dot name equal to some other one, say for example Rahim, and if I run this code, you see, I'm sorry, if I print this code again, you see it has been changed. So the properties of the function, properties of the class student you can change by a dot operator, almost similar as you have done in class and structure and instance in C language, right? Now let's come to a very important point, that is, sometimes it happens that as soon as you are creating an object, you need to pass some specific value for roll number and name during creation of the object. And how to pass that? You can pass within this comma. If I just increase the code little bit, I hope you can see now. So you can pass within this comma. If you want to pass within this comma, then this particular approach will not work. The reason is that this particular approach of writing class is saying as soon as an object will be created, object of class student, the roll number and name will be initialized by 0 and Ram. But suppose you don't want to do that, you want to, during creation of object, you want to pass a specific name and specific roll number, and that should be initialized by the particular role and name variable of that particular object S1. Remember, I can create one more object. Right now S1.role is giving Ram and Rahim, something like that, right? Sorry, something like this. But if I create one more object of student, say for example S2, okay, and I try to print the s2.role and s2.name, what I will get, you see, you are getting 10 Rohim. This is for s1 of role s1.name, but for s2 role s2 name you are getting again 0 and Ram. It means why it is different? Because s1 is one object, s2 is a different object. They are physically different. So naturally, for S1 object, the roll number and name, the value of these two property is know-how related with value of the property of S2 object. It should be clear to you. Anyway, as I was saying that if I want to pass the particular roll number and name during creation of object, then I have to pass it over here. For example, I want to pass roll number 10 and roll number name directly here. For example, Rohit, something like that. In that case, if you run this code, you will see you will get an error because it is written object takes no parameter. If you want to do this in this way, then you have to go for a split. You have to little bit change the code. What the change you have to do? You have to define a function over here which will take these two arguments and store within the role and name variable of class student. Now how to write that? You all know that how to write a function. Already you have seen in my previous video. So it's like def, then there is a specific function name for initializing the variables during creation of object. That specific function is called init function. And how it is written? It is written by 2 underscore, then I init, then again 2 underscore, right? And within bracket, you see you have 2 parameters you are passing during creation of object. That means you will definitely have 2 parameters here, but these 2 parameters are not sufficient. There is one more parameter you have to write, which is called self comma role comma name, and then obviously colon, because you know that colon you have to have. Naturally question will come in your mind that why this third parameter, because generally you all know that when we are passing 2 parameters you must have 2 parameters during writing the function definition as well. But remember, this self is not a exact parameter. Rather, what exactly it is representing the particular object S1 that I am passing here. So when I will initialize the code, instead of writing role equal to, say, not role, for example, suppose I'm writing R and I'm writing here name as n, I cannot write R equal to role equal to R and name equal to n, because this role and name is no longer exist in student. What you can say, you have to write, instead of only role, you have to write self dot role. It signify that this role part variable is of this student's own variable, and name is also student's class own variable. But R and N is not a variable of student class, it is a parameters over here. To differentiate this between these two, you have to have this self part over here. If you don't write self, you will get an error. As simple as that. Okay. Now, what you can do? Suppose I want to display the numbers. So, for example, I don't want to print in this way. I want to call a display function, but this display function should be a function of the student class, which will basically display the name of the students of that object. So display should call definitely by the object name dot display, something like this. Okay. Naturally, this display function will be present here. So how to write this? Again, a definition, def, then display. Remember, I want to print the name and roll number of object S1, and I am not passing anything. As I told you that when you are calling display function, you are basically trying to say that display the name and role of S1 object. How you can say that? Because you are not passing anything. To make it understandable for the Python, we write self here. This self signify that it is the object S1 of which display I am doing it here. For example, then you can easily print, say for example, you can write that self dot name and self dot role. So if you run this code, you will see you will get Rohit and 10. Just opposite one, if you just want to create another object, something like this, and you have some another roll number here and some another variable here, say for example, mm, um say for example, Obhik, something like that. And if you print this, you will see you are getting Rohit 10 and then Obhik 20, because this display function is called of S2 object. So what this self is doing during calling of second display function, it is passing this self means this object S2. So the self dot name is representing the name of the S2 object, the role variable of the S2 object. Okay. So by this way you can store the value of a class, and then you can you can use that, and you can pass this particular during creation of file. In most cases, generally when we use variables, or when we create an object, we always pass a variable in this way, and then we do some work. It's the only display function is written here, but maybe some more functions can be implemented based on the user requirement.